It was one of those quiet Thursday nights when the world feels too still. The TV murmured in the background, and I sat there in my favorite old pajamas, eating pasta I'd made for one. I wasn't angry about being alone, just used to it. David's business trips had become a normal part of our marriage, like laundry day or grocery lists. I'd stopped asking questions a long time ago. Still, the house felt heavier without his voice filling the space. So when my phone lit up with his name, my heart did that stupid little leap it always does. I ran my fingers through my hair, dabbed the sauce from my lip, and smiled before answering. There he was, David, grinning like a man with nothing to hide, holding a glass of red wine that shimmered under the hotel lights. "Hey, beautiful, miss me?" he asked, and just like that, I melted a little. "Of course I do," I said. "How's the hotel?" "Looks nice." For a moment, it almost felt real again, the way we used to be back when every call meant something more than habit. But then I saw it, just over his shoulder, past his smile, 2 plates, not empty ones either, both served, both waiting. My smile froze before I could stop it. "Dinner after meetings," he said casually, but I heard the stiffness in his voice. I tilted my head, pretending to adjust the phone. "Dinner?" I asked lightly. "I see, 2 plates there." He froze for just a beat, not long enough for most people to notice, but I did. "Oh, that?" he said, laughing a little too quickly. "Room service must have brought an extra one by mistake." My stomach tightened, but I smiled anyway. I'd spent years learning how to play calm while my gut screamed the truth. "Really?" I said, my voice soft, almost teasing. "They even made 2 portions of dessert by mistake?" He let out an awkward chuckle, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "You're funny," he said, and then, just like that, he changed the subject, talked about the weather, about the meetings, about everything that didn't matter. I nodded and smiled, pretending to listen, pretending I didn't already feel the floor shifting under me. Then he ended the call faster than usual, saying he was exhausted. The screen went black, leaving only my reflection staring back at me. I just sat there for a moment, frozen in that dim kitchen light, my half-eaten dinner turning cold. Then I looked closer at the screen, the frozen last frame of our call, and that's when I saw it. On the desk behind him, half hidden by the edge of the camera, was a woman's purse. Small, tan leather, the kind I'd never own, but always notice. My breath caught in my throat, but I didn't cry. Not yet. Something inside me went quiet instead, the kind of quiet that comes right before a storm. I turned off the TV and just sat there in the glow of the kitchen light, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the only sound left in the room. My mind replayed every detail of that call like a cruel little movie. The flicker of guilt in his eyes, the nervous laugh, the purse. I'd told myself for years that David was a good man. Flawed, but good. But that night, something deep inside me whispered a truth I couldn't ignore anymore. The man I loved was lying to me, right through a smile. Still, I didn't move. I didn't throw the phone or curse his name like some dramatic scene in a movie. I just breathed, slow, deliberate breaths, and stared at that frozen frame until my reflection blurred into hers. The woman behind him, the woman with the purse. My fingers tightened around the phone, not from rage, but from clarity. The kind of clarity that doesn't break you. It reshapes you. When I finally stood, the pasta on my plate had gone cold, untouched. I rinsed it in the sink, poured myself a glass of water, and whispered into the empty kitchen, "2 plates, huh?" It wasn't anger. It was confirmation. The first crack in a story I thought I knew. And as I turned off the lights and walked toward the bedroom, I already knew. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. By morning, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe I'd imagined the purse. That's what I told myself as I poured coffee and watched the sunlight crawl across the kitchen tiles. But the thing about doubt is, once it sneaks in, it never leaves quietly. It sits there, whispering in the back of your mind while you try to act normal. I tried to eat breakfast, tried to scroll through emails, but every time I blinked, I saw those 2 plates. So I decided to test him. Nothing dramatic, just a few harmless texts, the kind that sound casual if you read them fast. Hope you slept well. Did you go out for breakfast? I hit send and waited. He replied a few minutes later. No, too tired. Just ordered something up to the room. My thumb hovered over the screen. My heart thudded, slow and steady, like it already knew what was coming. 2 plates again? I typed and hit send. The typing bubble appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. Finally, his reply came through. What are you talking about? Short, defensive, no smiley face, no teasing. That's when I knew. I didn't even bother replying. I just stared at the message until the letters blurred, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel panic. I felt control. Quiet, deliberate control. I spent the rest of the morning pretending to do chores, folding towels, wiping already clean counters, organizing drawers that didn't need it. But really, I was stalling. My mind kept circling back to the call, to his tone, to that purse. Eventually, I sat at the table, opened my laptop, and searched the hotel he'd said he was staying at. My pulse quickened as I dialed the number, each ring loud and steady in the silence. When the receptionist answered, her voice was bright, polite, unsuspecting. Good morning, this is the Garden View Hotel. How may I assist you? She said. My mouth went dry, but I forced a calm tone. Yes, hi. Could you please connect me to Mr. David Lawson's room? There was a pause, the sound of keys clicking. Certainly, Mr. Lawson is in room 403. Shall I connect you? My hand tightened around the phone. Actually, I said gently, I'm his wife. Could you confirm how many guests are listed under that room? The woman hesitated. I could almost hear her glancing at the screen. Let me see. Oh, there are 2 guests listed, she said lightly, as if it were nothing. 2 guests. 2. My heart didn't race. It sank. But I thanked her politely, said goodbye, and hung up with a smile no one could see. There's a strange calm that comes when you finally stop guessing and start knowing. It's like stepping into cold water, shocking, but clarifying. After I hung up, I sat in silence, the phone still warm in my hand. Outside, a delivery truck rattled down the street, a reminder that life, ordinary life, kept moving, even when mine had just shifted. I didn't cry. I didn't even curse. I just stared out the window, watching a bird land on the fence, so calm, so unaware of the storm brewing behind my ribs. It was strange, that stillness, the kind that doesn't mean peace, but preparation. I started replaying the last few months in my head, rewinding every excuse he'd ever given me, the late meetings, the canceled dinners, the perfume that wasn't mine. Every piece fit too neatly now, like a puzzle I'd refused to see. I'd always prided myself on being intuitive, yet here I was, blindsided by the man I'd promised my life to. But maybe this wasn't blindness. Maybe it was trust, misplaced, overextended, but pure in its intent. That realization hurt more than betrayal itself. That night, I made myself tea, something steady to hold on to. The steam rose slowly, soft and curling, while I sat at the kitchen table again. Same seat, same silence. I thought of the receptionist's voice, so polite, so casual when she said 2 guests. And for the first time, I didn't feel powerless. I felt awake. I knew David thought I'd never notice, but that would soon become his biggest mistake. The next evening, my phone buzzed with an email from David. The subject line read, "Just catching up on work." As if nothing had happened, as if we hadn't danced around lies the night before. Inside was a photo, him sitting at a desk in his hotel room, laptop open, papers scattered, coffee cup in view. It was a performance, carefully staged, perfectly timed, but what he didn't realize was that sometimes the smallest details ruin the illusion. I zoomed in, and my stomach turned. There, On the bedside table sat a red lipstick, not mine. And draped carelessly across the corner of the bed was a silky scarf I'd never seen before. Not company issued, that's for sure. My first instinct was to call him, to scream, to demand answers. But then something inside me stopped. I'd wasted enough emotion on guessing. This time I'd let evidence speak. Quietly. Thoroughly. So instead, I forwarded the photo to myself, saved it in a folder titled Receipts, and sat back in my chair. My hands were shaking, but not from pain, from purpose. There's a certain power in silence, in watching a liar trap himself word by word. I wasn't the woman who begged for truth anymore. I was the woman who collected it, and I had just found my first piece. I called Carla that night, my best friend, my mirror when I can't see straight. She answered on the second ring, her voice already laced with worry. I told her everything, the 2 plates, the purse, the lipstick. There was a long pause before she spoke. "You need to confront him right now," she said, anger flaring through the phone. But I just sat there, swirling my glass of wine, feeling the weight of every choice that had led me here. "No," I said finally. "I'm not giving him the satisfaction of seeing me angry. I'll make him regret this properly." She sighed, half frustrated, half impressed. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I looked at the folder on my laptop screen, receipts. "He thinks he's clever," I told her, my voice calm, almost detached. "I'll let him think that. Just long enough for me to take everything he's trying to throw away." Carla didn't respond at first, but I could hear the smile in her silence. She knew that tone. I wasn't breaking. I was planning. After we hung up, I opened the drawer where we kept old paperwork. Bank statements, tax records, expense reports. I'd never paid much attention before. David handled most of it. But that night, I studied every line like a detective tracing a crime scene. I noticed the pattern almost immediately. Business trips reimbursed by his company, always listed with 2 travelers. My pulse slowed, steady and cold. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was using me to pay for it. I spent hours at that table, surrounded by receipts and lies printed neatly in ink. Every transaction told a story. Dinners for 2, hotel upgrades, executive suites. His confidence was almost insulting. He must have really believed I'd never look, never question. But the thing about trust is, once it breaks, curiosity takes its place, and curiosity doesn't sleep. By midnight, I had a timeline of every business trip he'd taken in the past 6 months, and I had proof that every one of them had a companion. When I finally leaned back, exhaustion washed over me, but it wasn't the kind that begs for rest. It was the kind that sharpens you. I closed my eyes and saw his face, that same practiced smile from our video call. It didn't hurt anymore. It infuriated me. He'd built his comfort on my blind faith, and now I had the power to take it all apart, one documented lie at a time. Before I went to bed, I opened my laptop again and created one more folder. Plan. Inside, I saved copies of everything. Photos, invoices, hotel confirmations. Evidence not just of his betrayal, but of his arrogance. I knew exactly what I was going to do, and for the first time since that call, I slept soundly. The kind of sleep that only comes when you've chosen your side. He came home 2 days later, suitcase in hand, wearing that same smug confidence I'd grown to mistake for charm. I watched him through the kitchen window before he even stepped inside. The slow swagger, the self-satisfied smile of a man convinced he was untouchable. I greeted him at the door like always, warm, polite, even affectionate. "How was your trip, love?" I asked, brushing a kiss against his cheek. He smiled, relaxed, unaware that the air in the house had shifted. "Long," he said, stretching his arms, "but worth it. Closed a big deal." I nodded, keeping my expression soft, neutral, almost admiring. "That's great," I said. "I'm glad the hotel treated you well. Room 403, right?" His head jerked slightly, just enough for me to notice. He blinked, hesitated mid-sip of water. "How do you, know that?" he asked, trying to sound casual, but the crack in his voice betrayed him. I tilted my head and smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. "Because I called them," I said. His eyes darted away, searching for solid ground that didn't exist anymore. "They said there were 2 guests in that room," I continued, my tone calm, deliberate. "You and your assistant, I assume?" His face flushed, and in that instant, I saw the panic he'd worked so hard to hide. He opened his mouth, desperate to spin another lie, but I wasn't done yet. "Isabella, listen, it's not what you think," he stammered, his voice trembling under the weight of his own panic. "She just helped me with the presentations, that's all." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. The same recycled excuses men have used for centuries, wrapped in fake sincerity. I walked calmly to the counter, picked up the printed photo from his email, and slid it across the table toward him. "Does she also help you with lipstick and scarves?" I asked softly. His face went pale. He looked down at the photo like it was evidence from a crime scene, which, in a way, it was. "Isabella, please, I can explain," he said, reaching out. I stepped back. "Save it," I said, my voice steady. "You made your choice. Now I'll make mine." For the first time, I saw him truly scared. Not because he'd been caught, but because he realized I wasn't going to yell, cry, or beg. I was calm, and that terrified him. Calm meant control. Calm meant consequence. He tried to close the distance between us, his tone softening, the manipulator switching tactics. "Babe, we can fix this." But I interrupted, not with anger, but finality. "Don't call me that," I said quietly. "Not after you turned our marriage into your cover story." The words landed like a gavel. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, it was verdict. And though he didn't know it yet, the punishment had already begun. He stood there in the middle of our kitchen, the same kitchen where we'd shared birthdays, late-night takeout, laughter that now felt like someone else's memory. I watched him shrink under the weight of his own lies, and for the first time, I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt clarity. It was like finally wiping fog off a mirror and seeing the truth that had been there all along. The man I thought I loved had been performing, and I'd been the quiet, trusting audience. Not anymore. I opened the drawer beside me, pulled out the folder I'd prepared, and laid it on the table. Bank records, expense reports, photos, proof of everything. "You've been stealing from your company," I said evenly, "and using me to do it." His eyes widened as he flipped through the papers. "Isabella, please, I can fix this," he started, but I cut him off with a slow shake of my head. "No, David. You can't fix what you built on lies." For a second, he just stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a man searching for oxygen. Then quietly I said, "I'm done being your silence." And with that, I walked out of the kitchen, leaving him alone with the sound of his own breath, heavy, shallow, panicked. The same way mine had been the night I saw those 2 plates. But this time, I wasn't the one suffocating. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The house was still, the air heavy with that strange calm that comes after a decision has been made. I showered, dressed in a pale blue blouse, the same color I wore on our wedding day, and gathered the folder from the night before. Every document was neatly labeled, every lie categorized. I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was his reckoning, and I intended to deliver it personally. At exactly 9, I walked into his company's headquarters, heels clicking against the marble floor, each step measured, unwavering. The receptionist smiled politely, not realizing what I carried in my hands. "I'd like to see Mr. Collins, please. It's regarding David Lawson," I said. Moments later, I was sitting across from the HR manager himself, a stern man in glasses who looked more curious than alarmed. "Mrs. Lawson, what seems to be the issue?" he asked. I opened the folder, sliding the evidence across his desk like a confession wrapped in logic. "Your employee has been misusing company funds," I said, my tone almost kind, "and conducting personal affairs during work trips, all billed to your firm." Mr. Collins glanced through the papers, his brows furrowing as realization dawned. "These are serious violations," he said finally. "We'll need to investigate immediately." I simply nodded. "I thought you should know who's been representing your company," I replied. My voice didn't tremble once. By the end of that week, David was suspended pending investigation. The assistant, his partner in deceit, was quietly terminated for misconduct. I didn't celebrate, not outwardly. I just made tea that evening, sat by the window, and let the sound of rain fill the silence. There's a unique kind of peace that comes from justice done quietly, without shouting, without chaos. It doesn't scream, it just settles, like dust after a collapse. When David came home that night, his face was different. Gone was the confidence, the charm, the man who thought he could twist truth into comfort. He stormed through the door, his voice cracking with panic and blame. "You did this! You ruined me!" he shouted. I didn't move. I simply pointed to the suitcase by the door, the one I'd bought him years ago for his first business trip. "Here," I said softly. "You'll need this. I hear hotels are more your style." He froze, and for a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Regret, maybe, or realization that he'd finally underestimated me. I didn't care which. I walked past him, slow and unshaken, and opened the front door. The morning light spilled in, soft and golden. "Goodbye, David," I said, not with anger, but with finality. It was the kind of goodbye that didn't need slamming doors or broken plates, just truth, pure and clean. When the door closed behind him, the silence felt different. Not empty. Free. For the first time in years, I could actually breathe. I walked through the house slowly, touching the things that were truly mine. The books, the photos, the plants I'd kept alive on my own. Each one felt like proof that I had always been whole, even when he tried to convince me I wasn't. That realization hit deeper than any revenge could. What I'd reclaimed wasn't money or status. It was myself. The next morning, I filed for divorce. No drama, no confrontation, just signatures and clarity. I transferred our savings, the ones in my name, into a new account. Every decision I made was precise, deliberate. I wasn't fueled by anger anymore, but by closure. He had built his empire on lies, and I'd taken it apart with nothing more than truth. The balance felt almost poetic. When the lawyer called to confirm the papers were in motion, I simply said, "Thank you," and hung up. Then I opened the windows and let the fresh air sweep through the rooms he used to fill with deceit. The curtains fluttered softly, sunlight spilling across the floor. For the first time, I realized revenge isn't about destruction, it's about restoration. And I was finally whole again. 6 months later, I sat by the ocean, sunlight flickering on the waves like quiet applause. The restaurant was small, tucked between a row of whitewashed cottages, the kind of place where time slows down. I ordered my favorite meal, pasta, of course, and a glass of red wine. When it arrived, the waiter smiled and asked, "Dining alone tonight?" I smiled back, not out of loneliness, but gratitude. "Happily," I said. And I meant it. The sea breeze brushed my face as I opened my book, letting the world fade into the soft clinking of cutlery and distant laughter. I wasn't thinking about him anymore. Not really. What had once been anger had turned into something lighter. Peace, maybe even forgiveness. Not for him, but for myself. I forgave the version of me who trusted too easily, who loved too hard, who believed lies because she wanted to. That woman deserved kindness, not shame. My phone buzzed on the table, pulling me back for a moment. His name lit up the screen. David. The message preview read, "I made a mistake. Please talk to me." I stared at it for a moment, watching the words blur in the sunlight. Then I deleted it without opening it, without hesitation. I took a sip of wine, tasting freedom in the dryness, and smiled. The sun dipped lower, turning the sky a warm shade of gold, and I watched the waves stretch toward the horizon. endless, unbothered, free. Somewhere behind me, a couple laughed, their glasses clinking together, and instead of envy, I felt gratitude. I'd lived that life, the one built on illusion, and I'd survived its collapse. Now every simple thing felt sacred. The sound of the ocean, the weight of a fork in my hand, the quiet joy of knowing no one was lying to me across the table. When the waiter brought dessert, I smiled again. One plate, one spoon, one woman who had finally stopped waiting for someone to treat her right. I savored every bite, slow and intentional, not to fill an emptiness, but to honor a wholeness I had rebuilt myself. That's the thing about peace. It doesn't arrive with fireworks. It just settles in, gently, like sunlight through an open window. As I paid the bill and stood to leave, I caught my reflection in the restaurant window, calm, composed, content. I whispered to myself, almost like a vow, he lied in a room meant for two. Now I live in peace meant just for me. And as I walked toward the sound of the sea, I finally believed it.